are back here on the GSMC Football Podcast. And for all right, and we are back here on the GSMC Football Podcast. And for the final.
Keep yourself in the loop of everything football on the Golden State Media Concepts Football Podcast. The latest news on and off the field, be it college football, Big Ten, SEC, Big 12, Pac-12, ACC to the NFL. We've got you covered. Listen to the Golden State Media Concepts Football Podcast.
And welcome everybody to another edition of the GSMC Football Podcast, brought to you by the GSMC Sports Network. As always, I'm your host, Kenneth Grunfelder, and it's great to have you guys here on this Tuesday, November 12th. We have a lot to talk about on the show today. Before I get into that, just want to remind you guys, as always, to tip or donate, get your comments recognized. Make sure to hit that super chat button in the chat to put out any thought or comment you want to see me acknowledge during the live broadcast. Makes the show more lively, more entertaining between myself, the host, and you guys, the viewers. We appreciate you guys' viewership each and every day, so any contribution you can make to the show means the world to us as we put out content for you guys each and every day. And also, the other way to help out the show is by going to the link at the bottom of the show segment on the ticker, gsmcpodcast.net. That is gsmcpodcast.net. So let's get into what we are going to discuss today. So we're going to start off the show. We're going to recap last night's game between the Dolphins and the Rams. Dolphins coming out with the win, much-needed victory, 23-15. So we'll get into the specifics of that in just a second. And then we'll recap a bunch of the games I didn't get to yesterday. We'll talk about the Chiefs and their win over the Broncos. We'll get into the Jets and their loss to the Cardinals as they drop to 3-7 now. We'll talk about the Giants and their loss in Germany against the Panthers. And then we will get into the Saints and their win over the Falcons, a surprise victory there. So, with that being said, let's get into the first topic, which is talking about last night's game between the Rams and the Dolphins. So, I thought this game was going to be high scoring. I thought the Rams were going to win this one, but the Dolphins actually get the win here. And I was definitely surprised with how the game unfolded. I thought both defenses played really well last night. Especially the Dolphins' defense. I did not expect them to play as well as they did. They were putting pressure on Matthew Stafford. They were getting after him. And the Rams, they were doing a good job at protecting Matthew Stafford, during this winning streak that they were having. And, I just thought with Puka Nacua and Cooper Kupp being back, this streak was going to continue, but it didn't happen. And, the Dolphins, on their first drive, they went right down the field and scored. And I thought, oh boy, is this going to continue? And, the Rams defense, to give them credit, they did step up and slow them down. But the Dolphins defense, I think, was the bigger story, or the biggest story coming out of this game, because the Rams did not score a touchdown last night. They kicked 5 field goals. And the Rams didn't do themselves any favors. There were costly penalties and mistakes that costed them. You had Kyron Williams fumbling. Matthew Stafford had a lot of passes batted at the line. You had Calais Campbell batting passes at the line, and he was interviewed after the game. Good to see that he's still playing. But, yeah, and the Rams didn't do themselves any favors. You had a field goal by Cardi later in the game where, he makes it, but then there was a penalty on the play that pushed them back, and then that resulted in them missing the field goal. I want to see where that was. It was in the third quarter. So they make it, but there was a false start. So it turns a 52-yarder into a 57-yarder, and Cardi ends up missing the 57-yarder, and then the Dolphins end up scoring a touchdown off of that. But we'll kind of go through the drive summary quickly. So, yeah, the Dolphins went 5 plays, 70 yards to open up the game, 3 minutes. They went down the field. He had 19 yards to Jalen Waddle, then another 36 yards to Jalen Waddle. That was really all he did the entire night. I thought he was going to have a big game, but that was basically it. It was just that first drive. And then you had Washington on the end around score a touchdown. Malik Washington, that was his first career touchdown. I thought it was Tyreek Hill on the end around, but it was not. He did end up scoring, and I ended up losing one of my matchups by 3 points. But I did go 4-1 in fantasy this week. So Malik Washington scores his first career touchdown, and that was from 18 yards out. So that made it 7-0. And the Rams immediately go 3-and-out. First play from scrimmage, they try to set up a screen to Kyren Williams, and he ends up losing 10 yards on the play. But there was a lot of punts. And then, like I said, Matthew Stafford had an interception, and he was trying to hit DeMarcus Robinson, but it got picked off, and the Dolphins turned that into 3 points. This was a Jason Sanders 50-yard field goal. So it was 10-0 after the first quarter. Then the Rams ended up punting, and this was a crazy sequence. So Tua ends up throwing a pick, and then immediately after that, Kyren Williams fumbles. And then after that, the Dolphins end up fumbling. Tua gets sacked, loses the ball, and the Rams get it back. They end up turning that into 3 points. So it was 10-3. Dolphins then punted on their next possession, and then the Rams were able to get 3 points before the end of the first half, and it was 10-6. And then, like I said, I brought up, the Rams going to kick another field goal, which would have made it 10-9, but there was that false start, and that led to, the re-kick that ended up being a miss by Cardi. And then the Dolphins turned that into a touchdown. A big play, 33-yard reception by Jonnu Smith, took it down to the 1-yard line. I was hoping he would score, and then I was hoping that the Dolphins would just run it, but they spread it out, and Tua found Tyreek Hill for a 1-yard touchdown, and that was the difference in one of my matchups that I ended up losing. Tyreek Hill was relatively quiet. Really did not have an impact on the game. It was a game-time decision going in with the wrist injury, but he ended up playing. And, the Rams did a great job at, because Tua definitely wanted to throw it deep, but the Rams made sure to, keep everything in front of him. There was really no big plays down the field. I mean, he had Jonnu Smith, but that was more of a yards after catch, or that was more of a him doing the work. That was a pass over the middle that he ended up taking down to the 1, but there was no deep shots. That's really what I was trying to say. But yeah, so it was 17-6, and then it was 17-9. Cardi kicked a 53-yard field goal. Then Jason Sanders kicked another field goal. A lot of field goals in the fourth quarter. Rams made it 20-12, and you had 3rd down and 6 from the Rams 34. Rams were able to stop him, but Jason Sanders kicked a 50-yard field goal. And then the Rams on 3rd down on their last drive, they elected to kick the field goal on 3rd down to make it 23-15. They went for the onside kick, and they didn't get it. So the Dolphins ended up winning. Tua on the day, he went 20-28, 207 yards, 1 touchdown, and a pick. He also did have the fumble, so a couple of turnovers by him. Only 67 yards on the ground by the Dolphins. Really couldn't get anything going on the ground. The Rams did a nice job at stopping the run in this game. Jalen Waddle, 3 receptions for 57 yards. Had a drop early on in the game that, maybe they could have cashed in and got some more points. Odell Beckham Jr. actually had a clutch catch in this game on another 3rd down. He only had 2 receptions for 17 yards. Tyreek Hill, only 3 receptions for 16 yards and a touchdown. And the Dolphins' defense, 4 sacks in the game. Like I said, the Rams are doing a good job at protecting Matthew Stafford these last few weeks, but not last night. Dolphins' defense showed up. Stafford went 32 for 46, 293 yards, no touchdowns, and a pick. Kyren Williams only 62 yards on the ground. Last couple of weeks, he hasn't really been doing much. But at some point, he's going to break out again. Puka Nacua had 14 targets, 9 receptions for 98 yards. Cooper Kupp, 7 for 80. Davis Allen, the tight end, 5 for 34. Tyler Johnson, 3 for 25. DeMarcus Robinson had a catch at the end of the game, the last possession for the Rams to set up the field goal. But yeah, Kyren Williams had a fumble in this game. 3 sacks by the Rams defense. And they dropped to 4-5. The Dolphins improved to 3-6. And look, I still think it's an uphill battle for the Dolphins. I mean, they do have the Raiders and the Patriots coming up, so they could get themselves back to 5-6. And then you get to the hard part of your schedule. But you do have the Jets a couple of times in there, so I expect them to win both of those games the way the Jets are playing, and we'll get to them later in the show. But they do have the Packers, the Texans, the 49ers, and the Browns in Cleveland, which I think they should win that game. But, the Packers, Texans, and 49ers games are going to be tough. And the game is in Cleveland. So, and, I know the Jets are not playing well, but it is a divisional game, so you never know. But, I mean, we saw last year, the Dolphins, they swept them. So that could happen that could happen again. So, they're not out of it, but again, it's an uphill battle. They basically have to win out. And for the Rams, I mean, that is a crushing loss for them. They do have the Patriots next week so they can get themselves back on track. But, they got some tough games coming up on the schedule. The Eagles, in New Orleans, and, they're coming off of a win against the Falcons. So who knows how that game could go. You got the Bills at home, the 49ers. You're at the Jets, which I think they should win. Cardinals, I think they could get even with them, and then they got the Seahawks again. So, but you look at the NFC. I mean, it's going to be tough. They gotta, get back. They gotta get back on track next week, and then go from there. But again, I give the Dolphins a lot of credit. Again, especially their defense. It really showed up. I was surprised by how they played. Because this Rams offense was rolling since they got their guys back. And, to keep them out of the end zone. Now, at one point during the game, Stafford could have hit Kyren Williams for a walk-in touchdown. That was near the goal line, and he missed him. So maybe that could have made a difference in the game. But it just didn't happen. They really just couldn't get anything going. Like I said, the Dolphins' defense was pressuring Stafford all night long, and they couldn't get anything going. So I give them a lot of credit. I didn't see it coming. Now, I mean, it's not overly surprising that they won this game because the Dolphins have a lot of talent on this team. It's just the way the Rams were playing, I thought they would come out with the win. But the Dolphins' offense did struggle after that first drive. I thought it was going to be back and forth, similar to how the game was when the Rams played against the Vikings a couple weeks ago. I thought it was going to be like that, but it never was. It never really got to that point. The Dolphins did just enough offensively to win this game, and the defense, like I said, just kept them out of the end zone. So that's a big win for the Dolphins. For the Rams, that is a tough loss. Let me know what you guys think, though, about this game. What were your takeaways from it? Let me know in the comments. So we are going to take our first break of the show, and then when we come back, we will talk about the Chiefs and their win over the Broncos. A crazy ending to that game. We'll get into that when we come back from our first break. So with that being said, stick around, and we'll be right back here on the GSMC Football Podcast.
I feel like I'm losing my mind. Is everybody in the world blind? Please, Lord, give me a sign, a sign. I feel like I'm losing my mind. Is everybody in the world blind? Please, Lord, give me a sign, a sign.
I wanna be the greatest. Everybody on the fake shit. I look around and feel like everybody is the fakest. I make this every day and I'm impatient, hoping one day I blow up from the basement. Statement, the top is so vacant. I don't hear shit that I think is amazing. Waiting for my day when I'm playing sold out shows where 1,000 faces. Hey, give me that crown, get in my way and to be put down. It ain't your place, all this my town. If I want that shit, then I'll get it right now. I'm losing it, the noose it fits. I'm losing shit, a stupid myth. You choose to live or choose to dip. You choose to fight or lose your grip and lose a gift.
I feel like I'm losing my mind. Is everybody in the world blind? Please, Lord, give me a sign, a sign. I feel like I'm losing my mind. Is everybody in the world blind?
All right, and we are back here on the GSMC Football Podcast. And for the second part of the show, we're going to now get into talking about the Chiefs-Broncos game. Chiefs picking up a win, a low-scoring game. 16-14 ended up being the final score, so we'll get into that. And, the Broncos, they were coming off of that blowout loss to the Ravens, and, it didn't get any easier, of course, because you, of course, have to go to Arrowhead, which is, again, that is a very tough place to play, but Broncos had a chance to win this game. They really did because, at the end, they're kicking game-winning field goal, and it ends up getting blocked. But, it's just a very tough loss for them. And, the Chiefs are lucky. It just seems like at times luck is on their side. And it was on their side here. Because, this was a chip shot field goal that Will Lutz would have definitely made if it didn't get blocked. And it got blocked. And unfortunately, maybe the Chiefs are the team of destiny to be the first team to three-peat. But I don't know. That's kind of, I do look at that because, listen, we could talk about the greatness of a lot of these players that have come through the NFL, but you do have to have a little bit of luck on your side. I do agree with that. And, the Chiefs were able to, make a great play to, stop a chip shot field goal, and they're 9-0 on the season. And, again, this game did not look pretty. A lot of people say they definitely should have lost, and, I don't disagree with you, but they got the win. They're 9-0 right now. So, to kind of look at how this game went, a lot of punts to start off the game, but then the Broncos went 9 plays, 80 yards down the field, and Bo Nix connected with the rookie Devon Veli, I think that's how you pronounce his name, for his first, I think it was his first career touchdown. So that made it 7-0 Broncos. And then the Chiefs, the Chiefs kicked the field goal. They went 10 plays, 52 yards, and Harrison Butker from 36 yards out made a field goal. But then the Broncos, they responded. You had 10 plays by Estime, the running back. Lil Jordan Humphrey had a 20-yard reception. And then Bo Nix connected with Cortland Sutton on 3rd and 2 for a 32-yard touchdown, and that made it 14-3. But the game was not over by any means. Then the Chiefs responded. They went 11 plays, 70 yards down the field, and on 4th and goal, Mahomes connected with Travis Kelce. The defensive back on the Broncos fell down. So I wonder, if he doesn't slip, does he make a play on the ball? And that was a big play in the game. If you stop the Chiefs there, that would have been huge. But, yeah, so that ended up being a touchdown, so it was a 4-point game. And then Will Lutz from 60 yards, towards the end of the first half, he tries to kick it and that one supposedly ends up getting blocked, but, that fell a little bit short. McCole Hardman ended up returning it, and he did a lot of running on that play, but, I thought he was going to run it back the way it was going, but no, he ended up getting tackled, and he just had to catch his breath because he did, like I said, did a lot of running on that play. So then in the second half, both teams punted on their first possessions. The Chiefs then went down the field. He had a 35-yard pass play to Samaje Perine, and then eventually, they get down to the 10, and they have to settle for a field goal, a 28-yarder by Harrison Butker, so that made it 14-13. More punts, and then the Chiefs, late in the fourth quarter, you had a 31-yard reception by DeAndre Hopkins, and on 4th and 2 from the Denver 2-yard line, Butker ends up kicking a 20-yarder. And then the Broncos, they get into field goal range. They get all the way down to the Chiefs' 27, and Will Lutz's field goal gets blocked. It was going to be a 35-yard field goal. So I guess, maybe it wasn't a chip shot, but, he should make that. It just, the Chiefs ended up making a great play on it, and they win 16-14. Bo Nix, 22 of 30, 215 yards, 2 touchdowns, no interceptions, was sacked a couple of times. The Broncos ran the ball for 78 yards. Audric Estime, their rookie running back, he was their leading rusher. He had 53 yards on the ground. Cortland Sutton, he continues to play well, 6 receptions for 70 yards and a touchdown, although he did have a big drop in the first half that I think would have made the field goal a lot easier for Will Lutz. I think it was on that drive. You had the rookie, Veli, 4 receptions for 39 yards and a touchdown. Adam Troutman had 1 for 34. Broncos defense, 4 sacks in the game on Mahomes, who went 28 of 42 for 266 yards, 1 touchdown, no interceptions. Kareem Hunt had 35 yards on the ground. He also was their leading receiver. He had 7 receptions for 65 yards. Travis Kelce had 8 for 64 and a touchdown. DeAndre Hopkins had 4 for 56. And the Chiefs get the win. They improved to 9-0 on the season. And it hasn't looked pretty. A lot of these games have been one-score games, but they're getting it done. They're 9-0, and they're sitting comfortably right now. They are the number 1 seed in the AFC, and most likely, if you're going to want to get to the Super Bowl, you're going to have to go through Arrowhead once again. And, do I think the Chiefs are going to three-peat? Look, I have them doing that. But, offensively, they're going to have to, they're going to figure it out. They are going to figure it out. They are going to get Isaiah Pacheco back at some point. So, you're going to have him and Kareem Hunt together, which should be a nice little combo. Kareem Hunt has done a nice job. I mean, he doesn't have the explosiveness like he did when he first, got drafted by the Chiefs. The first couple years he was there. But, he's getting the job done. And, getting Pacheco back, that'll be huge. So, and then you got Juju Smith-Schuster coming back. So, they're getting some reinforcements on this offense. But I don't know what's going on with them. It's just, it's strange. But this is what happened last year, and look what happened. So, I think they're going to be fine. I mean, once we get to the postseason, they're going to they're going to flip that switch. But they do have a big game coming up with the Buffalo Bills. And I think this is a big game for the Bills because they want to avenge a bigger game for the Bills because they want to avenge that playoff loss. They do. And I know all of America, it seems, at least looking on TikTok, everybody's rooting for the Bills. And that game will be played in Buffalo. So, hey, maybe Tyler Bass kicks a game-winning field goal in that. I mean, look, it's only Tuesday, but we'll get into it. And then as for the Broncos, I thought, Bo Nix, he made some good plays, of course. I mean, the touchdown to Cortland Sutton, that was a good pitch and catch. I know, again, Sutton had a costly drop in the game that, maybe could have resulted in points there, making the field goal a little bit easier. But if it was that drive. But, Bo Nix, I mean, it looks like the Broncos have their guy. I mean, if you can surround this guy with more talent, and I think Sean Payton has done a great job, with him, now that he has his quarterback that he wanted. The Broncos, I think, are on the come up. And, look, I mean, their season is by no means over with this loss. I mean, it definitely is a gut punch. I mean, you saw all the players on the sidelines after the field goal ends up getting blocked, and they were, they were destroyed by that because they should have won. And, right now, I think they're still the third wild card team. So, and right now the next team behind them is the Colts, who are 2.5 games back. And then you got the Bengals after that, and they play the Bengals later in the year. But the Broncos, they have the Falcons coming up at home, which we'll talk about the Falcons later in the show, but I don't know what to make of the Falcons right now. You got the Browns at home, you're in Vegas to take on the Raiders. I think they should win that. You're home against the Browns. I think you should win that. You play the Colts at home. I would lean towards that being a win. But then the last 3 games, you got the Chargers, the Bengals, who have a very good offense, and the Chiefs again. So, look, the Broncos, I think, will finish close to 500 or like 8-9, I'm thinking, or, get 9 wins. I'm seeing that, 8 or 9 wins right now. But, they have a good defense. Bo Nix, I think, is playing well with what he's got. So, they could be a playoff team. But, they do have some tough games remaining on the schedule. And, the Falcons is not an easy game either. Even though I don't know what's going. I really don't understand what's going on with them. They are just they're a weird team right now. But yeah, the Chiefs, they just continue to roll. They continue to find ways to win. And now they take on the Bills. The Bills, I think this is that one game that I did look at this game as maybe being a potential loss, but I still ended up taking them with the points, and I still thought they were going to win. But I did see the potential of them losing this game just because last year the Broncos beat them, and they're playing well this year, and they almost won, but they got shut out in the second half. You're not gonna win many games by getting shut out in the second half. I mean, ask the Houston Texans. They had a bigger lead, and they blew that. They got shut out in the second half, and that's exactly what happened with the Broncos. The Chiefs only scored 6 points in the second half, but it was enough to win the game. So we'll see what happens. But let me know what you think about this game. What were your takeaways from it? Let me know in the comments. So before we go to break, I just want to remind you guys once again to tip or donate, get your comments recognized. Make sure to hit that super chat button in the chat of any thought or comment you want to see me acknowledge during the live broadcast. It makes the show more lively, more entertaining between myself, the host, and you guys, the viewers. We appreciate you guys' viewership each and every day, so any contribution you can make to the show means the world to us as we put out content for you guys each and every day. And also, the other way to help out the show is by going to the link at the bottom of the show segment on the ticker, GSMCpodcast.net. That is GSMCpodcast.net. So when we come back from our next break, we are going to talk about, well, the next two segments, we will be talking about the New York teams. We'll first be discussing the Jets and their loss to the Arizona Cardinals, 31-6. We'll get into that and just, kind of dissect how that game went and, really what's how the Jets are going to look the rest of the way this season, and maybe, kind of discuss a little bit how it's going to look beyond that, because there's going to be it's going to be interesting what they end up doing at the end of the year and what certain guys end up doing at the end of the year. We'll get into all that when we return from our next break. So with that being said, stick around, and we'll be right back here on the GSMC Football Podcast.
Looking for your daily fix of sports talk without having to pay for it? GSMC Sports Network is available on YouTube. Just search GSMC Sports Network. Get your fix of daily sports talk shows on YouTube, absolutely free. NFL, college football, NBA, MLB, MMA, UFC, fantasy football, and so much more. GSMC Sports Network has shows running all day long, with new sports shows starting every 2 hours. Just like on your favorite cable sports channel, except GSMC Sports Network is absolutely free. Just search GSMC Sports Network on YouTube to catch one of your new favorite shows, like the GSMC College Football Podcast, Chip Shot Football Podcast, Hoops and Heels Women's Sports Podcast, GSMC Basketball Podcast, and so many more. Check it out for yourself. GSMC Sports Network, now available on YouTube absolutely free. Search GSMC Sports Network on YouTube right now.
All right, and we are back here on the GSMC Football Podcast. And for the third part of the show, we are going to now get into discussing the Jets and their loss to the Arizona Cardinals. And, first I want to give the Cardinals props because they're 6-4 right now, and they continue to win games. This is now their fourth straight victory, and they're in first place right now in their division, so you got to give them credit. And, you got the 49ers who are half a game behind them, the Rams losing. That definitely helped them out. So I give them credit. And, they are a physical team with running the football. And that's why, this game was going to be tough for the Jets. And, I did end up taking them this week. And I knew it was not going to be... I just knew what was coming, but I just still ended up doing it to myself. And this game was never close. And again, I didn't really get to watch a ton of football, especially the 4 o'clock game, or, well, here on the East Coast, the 4 o'clock games. But the late window games, because of where I was over the weekend. But I did watch the highlights, and, yeah, it just... not a good performance by the Jets all around. They couldn't tackle. They just could not score in the end. They could not get into the end zone. It was a collective disaster. And, even after they won against the Texans last week, and as my camera begins to act up, speaking of disasters, it's still, Jet fans were still not overly optimistic that this team was going to, turn it around. And that still ended up being they ended up being right because they ended up losing this game. And it's it's unfortunate because I was hoping that the Jets were going to be a good team this year. And look, I'll admit it. I was wrong. And I kept saying, I said it over and over and over again. I said, I'm going to go towards that storm. I know what I'm getting myself into by being on the optimistic side of this team. And I got engulfed by that storm. I really did. I got engulfed and it spit me out. It's been really bad. And it's not like it's one thing with this team. It's a collection of things. The offense is inconsistent because we saw what they did in the second half against the Texans. They looked like a competent offense. But then here, they just could not generate anything. Davante Adams didn't have a catch until the second half, I believe. Him and Aaron Rodgers cannot get on the same page for whatever reason. The inconsistencies with the offense, they can't protect the quarterback. The quarterback can't throw the ball down the field. I mean, there's been a lot of times where Rodgers has been checking it down to his running backs. There's no, where is the vertical passing game? And we saw a little bit of that last week. The passes to Garrett Wilson, the passes to Davante Adams. But the consistency is not there. They also can't protect Aaron Rodgers. I mean, on that 4th and goal, he gets absolutely drilled and loses the ball. They get no point. They get no points out of that drive. They were trying to, get into the end zone because they were falling behind, or they fell behind early, and he ends up getting sacked, loses the ball there. And on top of that, this defense, what happened? They can't tackle. I mean, Trey McBride is getting. Sauce Gardner has Trey McBride wrapped up, and he can't get him down. And Trey McBride ends up picking up a first down. This was on third down. And now you got Jet fans on social media and Jet fans all around now calling him Ahmed Gardner instead, because Sauce Gardner has not had a good year. It's just it's not good. It's not good. And it's just there's a lot of blame to go around, and this is looking like a colossal failure. Now, I was definitely hoping for better results when they traded for Aaron Rodgers. And I think we all assume that, look, the Jets have a very good defense. Rodgers doesn't have to be spectacular. He just has to be, average. And the Jets will win football games. Well, last year happened. He ends up getting hurt. Only plays 4 snaps. And then this year comes around. And, he's played every single game. But the Jets are 3-7. But again, it's not just him. It's a collective effort. And it is looking like that was a bad move to let Saleh go, Robert Saleh, in the middle of the year. I think it would have made sense. It would have made more sense had they let him go before the year or after the year, after this season. But they ended up letting him go mid-season, and Ulbricht, he can't handle this. And it's not his fault either. He got put into this situation. He got thrown into the fire with this. So, it's not really his fault, but this really, that was not the right move to do that. And Jet fans are outraged by this, and they have every right to be, because this was supposed to be, they were supposed to get better results than this, and they're not. And you look at what's going to happen after this year, I mean, who knows? Aaron Rodgers, I think it's like a $49 million cap hit for next year. So, is he going to come back? Is he going to walk away? I think I saw one of the conditions for Davante Adams coming to the Jets was that Aaron Rodgers was going to be the quarterback in 2025. So, I don't know. But they got to bring in a proven head coach. If they have two outcomes from this. It's that you bring Rodgers and Davante Adams back, you get in a proven head coach, and then you see, maybe if things change. or you just get rid of everybody. I mean, I think, is Joe Douglas going to be gone as well? I mean, that's probably what's going to end up happening because, he made all these moves and this team is 3-7. So somebody's going to lose their job. I mean, Saleh lost his job already, so Joe Douglas is probably the next one. But it's going to be really interesting. But the Jets are kind of just going in circles right now. And, I thought that the results were going to be better, but they're just not. They're just not. And it does not surprise me about the outcome of this game. Now, I did think that the offense was going to put up a little bit of a better showing because the Cardinals' defense is not that good, but the Jets made them look really good. But you got to give the Cardinals credit. They are playing really well right now. They had 147 rushing yards and 3 touchdowns. He had 2 rushing touchdowns by Kyler Murray, 1 by James Conner. James Conner was actually their leading receiver. He had 5 receptions for 80 yards. Trey McBride, 4 for 71. Marvin Harrison Jr. had 5 for 54 and a touchdown. Cardinals defense, 3 sacks in the game for the Jets. Aaron Rodgers, 22 of 35 for 151 yards. No touchdowns, no interceptions. Only 79 yards on the ground. 52 by Breece Hall, 27 by Braylon Allen. Garrett Wilson, 41 yards receiving. Devontae Adams, 31 yards receiving. He had 13 targets. But like I said, he didn't do anything in the first half. And then Rodgers had the fumble, of course. And the Jets defense only 1 sack of Kyler Murray. And, yeah, they lose 31-6. Cardinals went right down the field in their first drive. They went 6 plays, 70 yards. And James Conner scored. Then the Jets actually responded with a field goal, but then the Cardinals scored a touchdown. The Jets responded with another field goal. Cardinals got another touchdown. So the Cardinals scored touchdowns on their first 3 possessions. They scored on all of their possessions in the first half. And then the Jets fumbled. They're going down the field, and then Rodgers fumbles at the Cardinals 3, and then the Cardinals turned that into a touchdown. So they scored on every possession to start, the first 3 quarters, basically. The first 5 possessions. But then they finally punted in the third quarter, and the Jets did put together some lengthy drives, but it resulted in nothing. They punted in the third quarter, the Cardinals, and then their last drive of the game, that's what ended the game. So, yeah, it just was not a good day for the Jets. And the other thing, too, I want to bring up as well, this is what happened when they were on a Thursday night against the Patriots. They beat the Patriots, you have 10 days off, and then you lose 10-9 to the Broncos. You had 10 days off. You had another mini bye week. And you come out like that. Team is just not prepared. And then I know Rodgers comments at the end of the game. He says they had a good practice. He just, and he said it before. Something along the lines of where's the energy. I know that. I don't know if that was another week. But, yeah, like, what is going on? How do you have this much time off to prepare and you come out like that? It just doesn't make sense. But it's just, maybe it's just the team's not good. The team isn't good. They do have a collection of talent, but they're not a team. That's the best way to put it. That's how it's been put. They are a collection of talent, but they are not a team. And if this is how Aaron Rodgers is going to go out, you could argue that this is worse than last year, with the injury. Because if he just would have retired on the Achilles, because he thought about it, he wouldn't have come back this year, and we wouldn't. And it's not like his numbers are horrific. They're not terrible, but they're not great. We expected more out of him. But then again, he is a 40-year-old quarterback coming off an Achilles injury. So I was hoping for better results, and it just didn't happen. That storm engulfed me. So I was dead wrong about the Jets, and I will own it. And, we'll see what they do after this year. But it's unfortunate because I did want to see them do well. I wanted to see Rodgers do well, put together one last, solid year and then maybe call it a career. Maybe he comes back next year and he shocks everybody, but it's just, his last year in Green Bay was not great. I mean, they almost made the playoffs, they before they lost to the Lions, they looked like they were going to finish the season strong and get into the playoffs. And then, of course, last year happens, and now this year, it's just, now everybody's like, he's not Tom Brady. And, yeah, you're right. He's not Tom Brady. But, again, I would argue that Tom Brady, Matthew Stafford, Peyton Manning, they went to good situations. They had stability at the head coach. They had playmakers. And the Jets had playmakers. We thought they had a good defense. But I think one of the biggest things for why the Jets have not done well this year is coaching. That's really what it comes down to. Coaching matters. Look at the Bears. Look at how they're doing right now. I think, if you have a better head coach in there, an offensive-minded head coach, the Bears' offense, we thought they started to figure it out, but they've gone backwards. But the last couple weeks, they've kind of reverted back to how it was in the beginning of the year. But yeah, the coaching does matter, and you could have Aaron Rodgers, but you also need to have a good head coach. And right now, they got an interim head coach, and who knows what this season's going to finish like. But they're going to win maybe like 1 or 2 more games, the way they're playing right now. It's not good. Not good. So let me know what you guys think, though, about this game. What were your takeaways from it? Again, give the Cardinals their flowers. They deserve it. Jonathan Gannon's got this team playing well, and they're in first place. So, and the Jets are a third-place team. So, yeah, let me know what you guys think about this game. We're going to take our next break. When we come back, we will talk about the other football team in New York. We'll talk about the Giants and their loss to the Carolina Panthers. So make sure to stick around, and we will be right back here on the GSMC Football Podcast.
For the best and latest podcasts available anywhere, go to the podcast app on your cell phone and type in GSMC to access free content-rich podcasts on health and wellness, book reviews, sports, entertainment, relationships, social media, movies, technology, finance, and even weird news. Subscribe and download the GSMC Podcast Network's family of shows, available everywhere podcasts are found.
All right, and we are back here on the GSMC Football Podcast, and for the fourth part of the show, we are going to now get into talking about the other New York team, and that is the Giants and their loss to the Carolina Panthers. And, yeah, that, I want to say I was surprised, but, you can't really say that. The Giants, they're not a good football team. Now, I thought that they should have beaten the Panthers, and they did have a lot of missed opportunities that, they could have capitalized on, and, maybe we're having a different conversation, but no, they ended up losing the game. You had a missed field goal by Graham Gano, who came back after, missing a period of time with an injury. But he missed a field goal. The Giants were driving at one point, and Jones has his pass intercepted. He had a couple of interceptions in this game. One of them was tipped, and then that got picked off. And then you had another one, which I don't know what happened, but he throws it to Tyrone Tracy, and it somehow ends up with the Panthers. The ball ends up getting picked off there. So I don't know what happened on that one. And then you go to overtime, and the Giants get the ball to start overtime. And Tyrone Tracy fumbles on the very first play. and the Panthers kick a field goal to win the game. And I feel so bad for Tyrone Tracy because he was, they said he was in tears at the end of the game. And I think he is going to be a very good player for this team the way he looks right now. The Giants' rookie draft class has been solid this year. So, again, there is pieces to build off of. But it's just, they're at 2-8 right now. And it's just, there were a lot of, I just brought up some plays that define the Giants season. Let's talk about another play. So it's 3rd and 1, and the Giants do a flea flicker. And Daniel Jones has 2 guys open. And he doesn't pull the trigger. He doesn't throw it. And he ends up getting sacked. It's just, it has been a rough year. And I look at it and I say to myself, how does this team have any wins? How did they go? Like the Browns, I understand. But they also didn't score any points in the second half in that game. And Deshaun Watson was still playing quarterback. Like if Jameis is playing quarterback, they probably lose that game. How did they win in Seattle? How did they win that game? How did this team put up 29 points in Seattle? Now, the Giants did block a field goal, so if the Seahawks make that, they go into overtime, and who knows what happens. But I still don't understand how they won that game. I really don't. And now, who knows what's going to happen? Are they going to bench Daniel Jones? Joe Shane, I think, is going to be speaking to the media today, so I'm curious to see what he says. But, it's just been it's been an awful season for them. I said 7 wins. It's funny because it's funny how things change. Because week 1, I said, I don't know how this team's going to win that many games. Then they beat Seattle. I'm like, you know what? If they play like that, maybe you win some games. Now we're back to how are they going to win any games? But that's the NFL season. It's a roller coaster. But this could be it for Daniel Jones. He might not play after this week, but who knows? Both teams started the game with punts, and then you had the Panthers going 8 plays, 90 yards. Bryce Young to Xavier Legette, he had 23 yards. Then another 26 to Chuba Hubbard. Then another 26 after that. Chuba Hubbard had a really good game. And then Bryce Young hit Sanders, the tight end, for a 5-yard touchdown, so that made it 7-0. Then it was 10-0 Panthers at one point. Giants then put together a nice drive. They got down to the Panthers' 25-yard line, and Graham Gano missed a 43-yarder. More punts. Daniel Jones then threw his first interception of the game. He was trying to hit Theo Johnson, but it got tipped up in the air, like I said, and it got intercepted by Xavier Woods. And that resulted in... Well, the Panthers didn't do anything with that, but yeah, it resulted in nothing. And then the Giants, just took a knee to go into the half. But then they opened up the drive. They went 10 plays, 65 yards down the field. And Tyrone Tracy from 32 yards out scores a touchdown to make it 10-7. But then the Panthers respond. They go 10 plays, 80 yards. And Chuba Hubbard from 1 yard out scores to make it 17-7. A couple more punts. Then the Giants made it 17-14. They went 13 plays, 96 yards, almost 7 minutes of time possession down the field. And Daniel Jones scores a rushing touchdown. Then the Panthers fumbled in the fourth quarter. Chuba Hubbard fumbles. And then the Giants get down to the 8. And, Jones hits Tyrone Tracy, but somehow Jewell wrestles it away from him. And it gets that's called an interception. Then more punts. Giants then eventually tied the game to make it 17-17. And then we went into overtime. The Giants got it, and Tyrone Tracy immediately fumbled, and the Panthers win the game. Panthers win the game. They ran some plays, and Eddie Pinheiro from 36 yards out scores. Daniel Jones went 22 of 37 for 190 yards, no touchdowns, 2 interceptions. Tyrone Tracy had a good game. It's just the fumble. The fumble cost him, and also, I don't know how he didn't corral that pass by Jones, but he had 18 carries for 103 yards and a touchdown. Devin Singletary had 40 yards on the ground. Wan'Dale Robinson was their leading receiver, 5 receptions for 51 yards. Malik Neighbors had 6 for 50. He's been kind of quiet recently. Giants defense only 1 sack on the day. But yeah, Neighbors the last couple weeks, only 9 for 59 against the Commanders. He had 7 for 71 against the Steelers, 4 for 41 against the Eagles. He did miss some time, of course, with the concussion, but also just the quarterback has not played well. Bryce Young went 15 to 25, 126 yards, 1 touchdown, no interceptions. Chuba Hubbard had himself a game, 28 carries, 153 yards, and a touchdown. Panthers almost had 200 yards rushing in this game. The Giants' run defense had no answers for the Panthers' ground game. Jalen Coker was their leading receiver, 3 receptions for 41 yards. Xavier Legette had 3 for 40. I almost said DJ Moore. David Moore, 2 for 18. Chuba Hubbard had 4 for 16. And like I said, Hubbard had a fumble in this game. Panthers defense, couple of sacks. But the Giants now, if the season were to end today, they would have the number 1 overall pick. And for Giant fans, that's what they're hoping for. They're hoping that they can get that pick and, take their quarterback. But the problem I have is, who is going to be making that selection? Like, is Joe Shane and Brian Daboll, are they going to be back next year? Because if the Giants win 2 games, it's hard for me to say that they will be back. Or is at least one of them going to be back? Because I really do think that Brian Daboll is a good coach. It's just, Daniel Jones is not the answer. But it seems like there's a lot more issues, though, besides the quarterback. The quarterback, I think, is the biggest issue. I think if they had a better quarterback in place, they would not be 2-8 right now. They would have a better record. But, what happened to the defense? They got gashed by Chuba Hubbard. And Chuba Hubbard's been good this year. So I don't want to, diminish what he's done. But I've looked at this Giants defense as being a good unit. And they have showed up in games. But, I don't know. Maybe they're giving up. Maybe they're saying, this is a lost year. I don't know. I don't want to make assumptions, but it's a possibility. Look at what happened with Ben McAdoo in 2017. You saw players blatantly missing tackles. Now, I'm not saying that's what this defense is doing, but still, the Giants have seen this in the past where there's been a lack of effort. But, hey, the Panthers, look, they're on a 2-game winning streak. So, they are not looked at as the worst team in football. I would say, and my camera just turned off, the team right now that is the worst team in football is the New York Giants. And I would not have said that before the year started. I wouldn't. I did not look at the Giants as being the worst team in football. I thought they would have put together a little bit of a better effort than what we've been seeing. But not the case. They right now, record-wise, they are the worst team in football. And that's probably what's going to end up happening. They're going to finish with the worst record. And honestly, yeah, I am kind of hoping that they do get the number 1 overall pick, just because I would like to see them try to draft. I would like to see Brian Daboll and Joe Shane get the guy that they want. And then if that doesn't work out, then they'll be gone. That's really how I look at it. But then again, you could say, well, they drafted Daniel Jones. Or they drafted Daniel Jones. They paid Daniel Jones. They could have easily just moved off of him and started over. But no, they win that playoff game against the Vikings, and my camera continues to act up. And they were like, all right, we'll give him a shot. We'll give him another shot. And I thought it was smart that they put in that out in the contract in case, it doesn't work out, and it just hasn't. So, yeah, the New York football in general is just not in a good place. It's not. It's not in a good place. And I don't know how they're going to get out of it. Look at the Commanders. It basically took them 1 year, and they're a team that's going to be competing for a division title. And they got a big game coming up on Thursday against the Eagles. And the Giants, they've just been... They're another team that's just been going in circles. They have not been able to get out of it. And again, I thought when, we watched Hard Knocks over the summer that, okay, they have an idea of what they're doing. They're building an offensive line. They're building a defensive line. They're giving Daniel Jones a chance, one last chance. And I didn't expect 2 wins at this point. I was kind of hoping for a little bit more. But it's not going to happen. Daniel Jones has really regressed. Like, he already was not, an above average quarterback, but he's definitely he was average. And it's crazy that his ceiling was his rookie year. 24 touchdowns to 12 picks. When they made the playoffs, yeah, he had a lot of rushing touchdowns. What did he only have? He only had 15 touchdown passes. I was never that high on Daniel Jones. I always thought, he's okay, but I definitely would prefer if maybe they had someone else. And that could be the case here. Because if the Giants have, a top 3 pick, which they definitely are, they're going to draft a quarterback. And they're going to hit that reset button. And I still do believe that they have the pieces. They do have, well, not the pieces, but they have pieces that they could build around. You got the guys on the defensive line. You got Malik Neighbors. Tyrone Tracy, again, looks like he's going to be a good player. I know he had the fumble. Theo Johnson, I think, the tight end, he hasn't, they started to use him. He actually hasn't done bad. He's starting to, become more of a, have more of a role. You have Wan'Dale Robinson. There are good players on this team. It's just they still need. I do think that you need to have another good draft and another good free agency, and then maybe next year, maybe this team will start to build towards something. I think you need to give Joe Shane and Brian Dable one more year. Get your quarterback, get the quarterback that they want, and then see what happens. And if not, well, I don't know. But it's possible Dable's gone. But we'll see. But let me know what you guys think about this game. What were your takeaways from it? Let me know in the comments. So we are going to take our final break of the show. And then when we come back, we will talk about the Saints pulling off the upset against the Falcons. So make sure to stick around, and we'll be right back here on the GSMC Football Podcast. All right, and we are back here on the GSMC Football Podcast, and for the final part of the show, we are going to now get into talking about the Saints pulling off the upset against the Falcons, winning 20-17. And, the Saints kind of hit rock bottom last week when they lost to the Panthers, and, then all of a sudden, you let go of Dennis Allen, Darren Rizzi, the defensive coordinator, becomes the head coach, the interim head coach, and Saints end up winning the game Derek Carr is hitting Valdez-Scantling for these long touchdowns. And, you're without Chris Olave and Rashid Shaheed. And, they end up getting the win. They win 20-17. They improved to 3-7 on the year. Probably not going anywhere, of course, but this was a much needed victory for them. But yeah, it's just we have seen this happen time and time again. When a head coach gets fired, the interim head coach comes in, and a lot of times the team shows up the next week. It didn't really work out for the Jets. They ended up losing the first game without Robert Saleh, but for the Saints here, they get the win, and again, they're not going anywhere, but it's still nice to get a win here. And, to kind of go through the game, so the Falcons got the ball to start. They ended up punting. Saints, they got the ball. They had the ball for over 6 minutes. They got all the way down to the 6-yard line. They tried to go for it on 4th and 2 with Taysom Hill, and they ended up getting stuffed. Falcons then ended up punting. The Saints then put together an 11-play, 36-yard drive, and Group E from 38 yards out kicked the field goal. Younghoe Koo kind of had a rough game. He missed a couple of field goals in this game. He missed the first one to begin the second quarter, early on in the second quarter. Falcons ended up getting to the Saints' 35-yard line, and he missed a 53-yarder. Then the Saints went 4 plays, 57 yards. Derek Carr hit Valdez-Scantling for a 40-yard touchdown, so that made it 10-0. Then the Falcons put together a touchdown drive. They went 9 plays, 73 yards. You had a 33-yard reception by Darnell Mooney. And then later in the drive, it was 4th and goal. They went for it with Bijan Robinson, and he ended up scoring from 1 yard out. The Falcons ran the ball at the goal line 4 times. He had Algier run it a couple times 3 times for no gain, and then Bijan Robinson scored. But then the Saints, they answered. You had a 67-yard pass play by Derek Carr to Valdez-Scantling again, and then Valdez-Scantling scored another touchdown later from 2 yards out. And then Younghoe Koo missed a field goal. It ended up getting blocked, actually. It was a 35-yarder, so that one ended up getting blocked. So a couple of blocked field goals on Sunday between the games. Then the Saints got the ball to start the third quarter. They punted. Falcons then put together a field goal drive. Younghoe Koo from 27 yards out scored. But then the Saints answered with a field goal drive of their own. And then Kirk Cousins in that offense put together a touchdown drive. He had a 23-yard reception by Kyle Pitts, and later in the drive, 37 yards by Bijan Robinson, a 37-yard touchdown run. So that made it 20-17. But there was no scoring after that. Younghoe Koo missed yet another field goal. It was a 46-yarder. It hit the right upright. And then the Saints punted. Kirk Cousins then threw a pick. They were in Saints territory, but he was trying to hit Drake London. He ended up getting intercepted by Tyrann Mathieu. Saints ended up punting. And then the Falcons, they went for it on 4th and 4 to Ray McCloud. And he did something, Kirk Cousins, similar to what happened in the playoff game against the Vikings. Like, you have to throw the ball down the field, and he ends up checking it down. Like, remember, it was like 4th and 14. He checks it down to T.J. Hawkinson. He ends up getting tackled way short. And that was the same thing here. I mean, Ray McCloud ended up losing a yard on this play. So I don't know why they didn't try to, throw it deep or something. I don't know. I don't know what they were trying to do on that last play. But yeah, Kirk Cousins finished 23 of 38, 306 yards passing, no touchdowns and a pick. Bijan Robinson had a good game, 20 carries for 116 yards and 2 touchdowns. Algier had 11 for 59. Falcons ran the ball for 181 yards, but it's just the passing game. It's been inconsistent. Drake London had a good game, 8 receptions for 97 yards. Darnell Mooney had 5 for 96. Kyle Pitts, 4 for 55. Falcons defense, no sacks in this game. A couple of fumbles by Kirk Cousins, but he didn't lose any of them. Younghoe Koo had a rough day. 1 for 4 on field goals. So, you go 3 for 4, Falcons end up winning the game, but they did not. And Derek Carr, he went 16 to 25, 269 yards, 2 touchdowns, no interceptions. Alvin Kamara had 55 yards on the ground. Valdez-Scantling, 3 catches for 109 yards and 2 touchdowns. Kamara had 5 for 54. Saints defense, 3 sacks on the day of Kirk Cousins. Tyrann Mathieu, of course, had the pick. And yeah, they pick up the win. I don't know what to make of the Falcons. They're just so inconsistent. And they probably are still going to win the division. because the Bucs, are dealing with injuries and they just keep losing games, and the Falcons are 2-0 against them this year. So I think they will get the division, but it's just this team is just, you think they figured it out, and then they lose a game like this, and you're like, what's going on? I really don't know what to make of it. I really don't know what to make of it. I mean, the running game was efficient, but the passing game, Kirk Cousins did throw for over 300 yards. In this game. So I really, it is. They're just a weird team to figure out. But I think, I think at some point, you would think they're going to figure it out, right? But I don't know. It's also, I feel like they also struggle on the road too at times. Man, my camera just, these last 2 days, I apologize, folks. My camera just does not want to cooperate. I don't know what it is. It just does. It just does not want to cooperate. We were doing good, and all of a sudden it just, I don't know what it is. It just decides to act up. But that's just how it is. It's all right though. I mean, it was better today than it was yesterday. Yesterday was just, I don't know what was going on. And then my mic at times wasn't working either. I don't know what's going on, but yeah, it's just, it happens. It is what it is. All right. And you just, this is part of the business. You're always gonna have some issues that come along. And right now, my camera's always been a problem. I mean, when it works, it works. It works fine. It's just, see, we're good now. But it's just, never mind. I spoke too soon. It's all right. We're almost done with the show here. But, yeah, back to what I was saying, though, is hopefully it calms down here, but probably not. But, yeah, I just really don't know what to make of the Falcons. I think they're still, like I said, I think they'll still make the playoffs, of course. They're going to win the division. But are they going to go far? I don't really know. Like, if they keep struggling like this, I mean, with the passing game, Kirk Cousins has got to be better. I don't really know what to make of it. If anyone wants to point out what the issue of the Falcons is, you could maybe say the play calling. I don't know. There's many things you could point to. I'm kind of an outsider when it comes to the Falcons, so I just, I see that Thursday night game against the Bucs, but you could say, well, the Bucs defense is not very good. And then, you struggle against the Saints this past week, and it's a divisional opponent. The Saints still have talent on this team, but, the Falcons are the better team. They should win this game. They got an interim head coach on the other side. You should win this game. I guess one of the biggest reasons they lost is just that Younghoe Koo just could not make field goals for whatever reason. You could point to that. But, they got to be better. They got to be better. And, the Saints, they were missing, you're missing Chris Olave, you're missing Rashid Shaheed as well. I don't know. I feel like the Falcons should have maybe have gotten another weapon in this offense. I really do believe that. I think Ray-Ray McCloud has done a nice job as being the number 3, but, and Mooney's been good this year. Drake London's been good this year. Kyle Pitts has had some good games, but I felt like they needed another pass catcher. I felt like maybe you could have went out and got another receiver. But they didn't do that. I think they like the guys that they have. So, and like I said, Ray-Ray McCloud has done a nice job. Mooney's been good. Drake London as the number 1's been good. But I just think you needed somebody else, and they didn't go out and do that. But the running game's been good. Bijan's had a good year. Has had a good year. Yeah, I just don't know. But look, the Falcons are lucky that they're in the division that they're in. They're in the driver's seat to win the division. But they got a tough game next week against the Broncos. So, they got to, they got to step up their game there. That is not going to be an easy game. Back-to-back road games is tough. And, the Broncos, definitely want to, get back to, the win column, after losing that heartbreaker to the Chiefs. So, we'll see what happens. And for the Saints, look, you're just trying to, I guess, I don't know what Saints fans, I guess the Saints fans want them to tank as well, but, now they got some energy back with that win. And, Derek Carr's healthy. So, they're going to win some more football games. So I don't think Saints fans are going to be too happy with that, but that's where we're at. So that's pretty much it for the show for today. Thank you guys for tuning in. Make sure to check out all the other shows. Give the other shows some love, like I always say. And, make sure to leave a like, comment, and subscribe to the video. And, as always, I'm your host, Kenneth Grunfelder, signing off from the GSMC Football Podcast, brought to you by the GSMC Sports Network. Have a good day, and I will talk to you guys tomorrow. Take care.
Let's go. I wake up to a little bit of drool on my pillow, feel like it's gonna be a bad day. Yeah, I'm tired of shit, and the coffee ain't hit yet.